you so much for joining us in this edition of the Primetime Newscast on Equinox Television. Tonight, the situation in Zimbabwe, the country of Robert Mugabe, remains uncertain since the military took over the state TV. That was several hours ago. The South African President Jacob Zuma, in a statement, has indicated that the Robert Mugabe said that he is confined but in good state. The whereabouts of the First Lady in the country, Grace Mugabe, up to now remains unknown. In this newscast, we shall be getting the reaction of some African leaders as well as actors out of the African continent. Also in this newscast, we take you to the November session of Parliament that was day 2 today and boycotted by the principal opposition political party in Cameroon, as the MPs and senators could not be spotted anywhere around the hemicycle in Guayaquil, the nation's capital. Those are headlines. Stay with us for the details. We shall be right back. Good evening to you, ladies and gentlemen. We thank you so much for joining us at this hour on Equinox Television. You are watching the Primetime Newscast. We begin right here with the uncertain situation in Zimbabwe, the country of Robert Mugabe. As we speak, troops are patrolling around the capital city, Harare. The president of Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe, is said to be under house arrest by the military after a phone interview with the South African President Jacob Zuma. As Ella indicated, it is after the military took over the state television several hours ago. On what is happening in Zimbabwe and what unfolded between yesterday and the early hours of this morning, Catherine Coney has the details in the following report.
An easy calm on Zimbabwe this Wednesday after confusing scene on street with nights of unrest. Military vehicles blocked roads close to Parliament and court in the headquarters of Harare. Explosions and gunfire were heard in northern suburbs of the capital and even near the 93-year-old President Robert Mugabe private residence. The soldier seized the national broadcaster, where the spokesman denied there had been a coup.
Comrade R.G. Mugabe and his family are safe and sound, and their security is guaranteed. We are only targeting criminals around him who are committing crimes that are causing social and economic suffering in the country in order to bring them to justice.
The whereabouts of the president is still to be known, but according to Jacob Zuma, president of South Africa, Robert Mugabe, is being held at his home. The move comes after Robert Mugabe sacked Emerson Mnangagwa in favor of his wife, Grace Mugabe. The two are seen as the main candidate to succeed Mugabe.
First Lady has ambitions, would like to govern after her husband, but I don't know anything that says that that is illegal, and the military moving in clearly to stop her does not ring like a good move to me.
According to Mugabe, attempt to position his wife as his successor has upset leading figures of ZANU-PF and the military.
Is it a coup in Zimbabwe or not? That is the question that many have been unable to answer. But after seizing the state TV several hours ago, an army spokesperson announced that it was targeting people close to Mr. Mugabe who had caused social and economic suffering in the country. Meantime, we look at Robert Mugabe as an individual, that is the president of Zimbabwe. Shortly after the incident, we are talking about an individual that has been at the helm of the country for several decades now, precisely for 37 years now, from a freedom fighter, a nationalist, to a dictator. That is the word, according to critics, that best describes Robert Mugabe, the president of Zimbabwe, whose office is now on a balance. Zimbabwe has known just a single leader since independence, and that is Robert Mugabe, who came to power 37 years ago, as I indicated. Let's have the details in the following report on who he is and his journey so far.
If there is a longest-serving post-independence leader Africa has ever had, it is Robert Mugabe. The 93-year-old came to power after Zimbabwe gained her independence from the UK in 1980. Just like Nelson Mandela of South Africa, Robert Mugabe was idolized as an independence advocate
But as years went by, he was gradually being transformed from Africa's hero icon into a dictator. In 1964, Robert Mugabe, who had devoted himself to full-time activism, was arrested and slammed a 2-year imprisonment, suspended for 15 months, a fate he suffered alongside other officials of the Zimbabwe African People's Union. Before and after his release, the nationalist spirit grew higher, and in the late 70s, Robert Mugabe called for the overthrow of the then Rhodesia's predominantly white government in the country. In 1980, the country's first ever election after independence was organized. Though marked by intimidation, Robert Mugabe became leader under the ZANU-PF party, a post he occupied till date. Robert Mugabe has been praised for saving Zimbabwe from the white minority rule, colonialism and bondage, but he's also been blamed for holding the economic and political powers of the country hostage. Zimbabwe's economy under Robert Mugabe has steadily deteriorated. Living standard declined with high rate of unemployment, as an estimated 80% of the citizens in the country were unemployed by 2005. Zimbabwe's election is in few months, and plans by the 93-year-old Robert Mugabe to run as candidate frustrated popular opinion. The dismissal of the country's Vice President Emerson Mnangagwa few weeks to the Congress of the ZANU-PF party in December was the last straw, especially as there were widespread speculations that the First Lady Grace Mugabe would replace her husband. And as we said in the headlines, the president of Jacob Zuma, or the South African president in his capacity as chairman of the South African Development Community, has said that he has dispatched envoys to Zimbabwe to follow up the unfolding situation in the country. The envoys would meet with the president and the Zimbabwean Defense Force, and President Jacob Zuma has reiterated his call for calm and restraint, and for the team to ensure that peace and stability are not undermined in the country. The president of Nigeria, Muhammadu Buhari, who equally called for calm and peace, respect in the wake of the military turnover in the country, and is not the only president in the African continent that has reacted. We have the reaction of Alpha Conde, the president of Guinea. Meantime, several international groups and countries are equally reacting. We have the European Union, Amnesty International, that has appealed with the military to maintain peace, security of the people in Zimbabwe, regardless of their political allegiance, and restrain from any actions that puts the lives of humans at risk. It is equally a similar situation with the European Union. That is the situation in Zimbabwe, and we are going to be talking about it in the second part of this newscast. Our guest, who is a historian, shall be telling us whether it is a coup or not. Is the situation in Zimbabwe, speaking to other African leaders, especially the President of the Republic of Cameroon. Now, we take you to the nation's capital to talk about the situation at the National Assembly and also at the Senate. Today was day 2 as far as the November session of Parliament, which opened yesterday, is concerned, and SDF MPs and senators were nowhere to be found at the hemicycle or at the Senate where the sessions were taking place. It is for the 4th time since the start of the Anglophone crisis that members of Parliament are meeting in an ordinary session, and for the first time that the SDF political party has decided to stay out of the picture as far as the sessions or parliamentary sessions are concerned. It is the party's strategy to protest against the refusal by the government of Cameroon to listen to the cries of the English-speaking population. They made a press declaration yesterday, during which they equally indicated that the President of the Republic of Cameroon has so far been applying military solutions to a pure political problem. At the level of the Senate, as we could see the images, the Senate President condemned the killings of gendarme officers in the 2 English-speaking regions of the country and escalating violence in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon. Senator Masenya Njifendi expressed satisfaction over government's efforts so far at resolving the Anglophone crisis and pledged his full support to the President of the Republic. He also talked about the crisis rocking the far north region of the country, precisely the Boko Haram insurgency. That was during his opening address yesterday at the Senate. Here in the country's economic capital, Douala, the littoral branch of the United Councils and Cities of Cameroon is stepping up efforts to improve the deplorable condition of some council or municipalities around the city. At the press conference which was organized in the country's economic capital, Douala, today, the association announced an upcoming exploitation forum that is going to be in the coming days. Details with Babla Jonathan.
Several parts of the littoral region of Cameroon are plagued by many underdevelopment challenges. The dilapidated state of roads is one of the major problems in cities and hinterlands. Even in the regional capital, Douala, several kilometers of roads in different parts of the city are in a deplorable state. The problem is acute in remote parts of the region. Besides these are problems of inadequate or absence of social needs of the population, like health facilities, electricity, potable water, among others. To find solutions to these problems, littoral regional officials of the United Councils and Cities of Cameroon Association say local councils and government have to step up the effectiveness of decentralization.
Councils believe that some steps, some regions have to be taken to foster decentralization. And we believe that we also, as council, we also have to take some actions to foster development, not just waiting for the administration.
And for this to yield concrete results that will improve on the living conditions of inhabitants, the Association of Councils and Cities is seeking aid from the private sector.
Councils must really deal with the private sector to create wealth, to create employment, to create revenues, to create development. And we believe that in the littoral region where we have a lot of companies, we have to play with the private sector to create some smaller revenues for the benefit of the development of our rural areas.
It is the objective of an exposition forum on the development of entrepreneurial activities of councils in the littoral region that will be organized by the regional branch of the United Councils and Cities of Cameroon from the 23rd to the 25th of November 2017 in Douala.
We now take you to Campo, a locality in the south region of the country where local inhabitants are now walking barefooted as a result of the bad states of the roads in that part of the south region of the country. That is not the only problem that local inhabitants are facing. The absence of electricity has also been a very disturbing situation to the entire population. Innocent Aze has the details in the following report.
Walking barefoot has become a forceful style of walking adopted by the population in the town of Campo due to poor road infrastructures. We are speechless on the state of roads. Breakdown of vehicles is common. The town of Campo is split into two halves with impossibility to connect with the town of Kribi, situated about 75 kilometers from Campo. During the rainy season or heavy downpour, transportation fare rises steadily, thereby impacting negatively passengers. To travel from Campo to Kribi alone requires the sum of 5,000 francs CFA, opposed to the 3,000 francs paid during the dry season. To return, we are compelled to spend another 5,000 francs, making a total of 10,000 francs to and from Kribi. Apart from lack of accessible roads, the absence of electricity paralyzes economic activities. As a restaurant operator, when there is power failure, business is stagnant as preservation of food items becomes a constraint. Electricity is unstable on a daily basis. Tired of the numerous social problems, the population of Campo remains positive. Government will take quick measures to ensure the town of Campo is redeemed from these issues.
The towns of Boya and Limbe in the southwest region of the country are still without paramount rulers after the disappearance of Chiefs Endele and Chief Manga Williams. respectively. In Boya Southwest region, the royal families and kingmakers are still divided over who to succeed Chief Endele about 4 years after his disappearance. The senior divisional officer for Fako Division has warned that the Prime Minister head of government is going to be appointing a successor if the people fail to come up with a candidate. It is after a meeting which took place recently ended in a deadlock. Derek Jato tells us more.
The kingmakers before the senior divisional officer for Fako Division failed in their duty to provide the next paramount chief of Boya Subdivision during a consultative talk that took place recently in Boya Subdivision.
How many families shall be consulted for the division? One family, only here. So we have 25, we have 16, we have 3 now, we have 1.
We have. Since the departure of Chief Lifafa Endele years ago, this first-class stool has been vacant, and the wish of the senior divisional officer for Fako Division in the person of Emmanuel Ngama Ledu is that the Boya people should celebrate the new year with a new leader.
Our wish is that before the end of this year, we may celebrate the new year with the paramount chief of Boya.
But critics hold that the people to facilitate this are not making things possible for the administration. If not, how can members of the royal families be having conflicting views on the procedures of coming out with a successor?
The Bakri tradition is extremely explicit on the point of succession. It is from father to son. My Juma is my lovely cousin, but I think he's mistaking the point. It's quite hereditary. Within the royal family household, it's not possible from father to son.
Today in Boya, many say this Boya chieftaincy crisis has taken a political twist, which has now given birth to different parties and camps.
Tradition. And now, how can you imagine that they will designate my junior cousin, who is in the States, king, when, for instance, I, Yomba, am alive?
I'm a PhD student in the US. That's why I'm there. I grew up in the chief's palace. He was my uncle. He raised me up for 10 straight years. Yeah, like his footstool. So, people have different opinions of different situations. And I respect his opinion, but that's not the truth about my life.
Though going back to his office with an unsettled problem, the senior divisional officer for Fako Division has made it clear that the Prime Minister per the text will appoint the paramount ruler of Boya if the kingmakers or the royal family members are still at the extreme. Another rendezvous therefore was taken in the weeks ahead to continue the consultative talks on who will be the next first-class chief of Boya Subdivision.
We continue with culture. The Sawa community of the Adamawa region that have advocated for peace and living together. It was during the launching of the 2017 edition of the Ngondo Festival in Gaundere. Jacques Ekwekinge is our reporter in the Adamawa region. His report.
The 2017 edition of the Ngondo Cultural Festival is being celebrated under the theme Moye Moye Pete, meaning light and more light. For the president of the organizing committee of the 2017 edition of the Ngondo Festival in the Adamawa region, this year's theme is in connection with the recent socio-political climate that the country is actually witnessing. The ancestors should help to restore peace and tranquility in Cameroon.
Theme is light. Again light. It is also the peace, because our country has a moment of difficult period.
It should be recalled that the Ngondo Cultural Festival is an annual event of the Sawa people. However, with the present socio-political climate of the country, other cultural groups, particularly from the Anglophone regions, are part of the Ngondo Festival as a sign of living together. While launching the activities of Ngondo 2017, the government delegates to the Gaundere City Council talked of peace as the watchword. The activities of Ngondo in the Adamawa region will run to the 3rd of December 2017 with varied activities.
And in sports football, Lions player Christian Basogok has expressed regrets over Cameroon's inability to qualify for the 2018 World Cup bid for Russia. He was speaking during a press conference which took place here in the city of Douala. Samadjikan Gabriel has the details.
Best player at the African Nations Cup Gabon 2017, Christian Basogok faced pressmen Wednesday in Douala. Basogok, who was unknown to many Cameroonians before the AFCON 2017, gained the admiration of the entire nation thanks to the quality play style he put up in Gabon. In front of journalists, Christian Basogok was categorically clear that he didn't regret his move to China, nor does he blame the agents who negotiated for his move to play in the Chinese Super League.
Ça, je ne veux pas dire que c'est un mauvais choix. Donc, par rapport à ma signature en Chine, je fais confiance à mes agents et je pense que ça arrive de voir
The Hanan Giant player, however, lamented on the fact that the reigning African champions didn't qualify for the 2018 FIFA World Cup in Russia. For the non-qualification of the indomitable Lions to the World Cup, Basogok didn't lay blames on the head coach, Hugo Bruce, whom, for him, had worked enormously to give the national team the status it has currently. The former Lyon Blazer Futuni player, Christian Basogok, is on holiday in Cameroon after the end of the Chinese Super League.
And that brings us to the end of this first segment of the news. Up next is Talking Points. Stay with us. Mr. Ngindo Gibet, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us tonight on Talking Point.
Good evening, Good evening. Glad to be here to talk about situations in the country and around the world. Thank you.
The pleasure is ours as well. You are a historian. You must have been following up developments in Zimbabwe. The military seized control, but said on TV that Robert Mugabe is safe. After seizing the state TV, the army equally indicated that they were not targeting the president, or the presidency rather. They were just targeting those that are responsible for the social and economic suffering in the country. Do you think it is a coup in Zimbabwe?
Well, I don't think only I myself can judge it. All hands point to a coup. All hands point to a coup because they may have announced anything on radio, but we look at recent errors committed by the ZANU-PF chairman, who is Robert Mugabe himself. You're going to realize that the army, who had supported him all along, are disgruntled around him and are disgruntled with the way he is taking things. Firstly, his choice of succession to him in Zimbabwe. We see in 2008 he lost elections clearly to the opposition, Changarai, but he was asked by his army chief, General Constantino Chiwenga, to stay in power, and that he has the backing of the army. And this is somebody with whom he fought the guerrilla war in 1970s, took over power, and had been in power all along. But suddenly, Mugabe has made a lot of mistakes. The first mistake he started was to seize fertile soils that were owned by the white minority, but in the means of wide distributing to the Zimbabweans, he happened to have created a class of landowners, an indigenous class of landowners, which left a lot of people and the Zimbabweans themselves very disgruntled, disappointed. In fact, it put a question mark on the corporate credibility of his policies against the whites. Zimbabwe turned from being the breadbasket of Southern Africa because of the presence of the minority whites who were actually and efficiently managing the vast fertile soil that Zimbabwe possesses, to a desert whereby he granted lands to people who were not technical and who were not able to produce what Zimbabwe was producing. That was his first error. His second error is a purely political one, where his wife Grace, whom he is above by close to 4 decades, he's at 93, the wife is at 52 at 52 now. Party hierarchy is still there. There are people with whom he had fought this war. There are people
like
with
the vice president,
like the vice president Emerson Nawanga.
Could we say that it was a big mistake, one of the biggest mistakes of Robert Mugabe, to have sacked the vice president that is highly being supported by a faction of the ZANU-PF party.
It was an unbelievable mistake. In fact, I say that unbelievable mistake because this is somebody he had ruled with for long, and he has been in very good terms with for a very long time. To have sacked him because his vice, Emerson, was trying to struggle over succession with his wife was a blunder. Secondly, when he sacked Emerson and Emerson reproached him, or Emerson criticized him, he issued him a warning while he was in South Africa. And on Wednesday, when he sacked the vice president, a response came from the ministry when his chief, Constantine, criticized the action, and the party leadership responded that the army is trying to create a treason or create a treasonable act to the country, and they are trying to keep the country at an insecure and an unstable political mood. However, on Monday, his army chief of staff, who had been by him all along, issued a warning. In the morning hours of Monday, he issued a warning within the ZANU-PF party that the unnecessary purging that is going on by the president himself has to stop. Otherwise, the military will have to intervene.
Like it has done.
Like it has done, and that was taken by the ZANU-PF party, the ruling party, as a joke because they knew that they are in power thanks to the backing of the army since 2008. Now, yesterday morning, he repeated the same issue, and they started mobilization. Military tanks were seen displayed, and some kind of lightning training started in the morning hours of yesterday. Then this morning, they swept the ZBF, the Zimbabwean Broadcasting House, and General Moyo.
Now, trying to avoid the word coup is what is causing the confusion here, because many are asking, what is the fate now? What is going to be the fate of Robert Mugabe?
They can call it anything, but every hands point to it. I listened to a veteran Ugandan journalist this morning, Mwalimu, who pointed to it that its preparation, its start, and its end has no other name than a coup. This is the way he described it. And the purpose for which he described, and I'm trying to justify it, tell us why it is a coup, that anything can be announced, but it is a coup because of the grudges, the conflicts, the infighting that has been within the party, and the recent clash that has occurred between the army on one side and the government on the other side. All hands are clear. Firstly, the First Lady is reportedly not in the country presently.
It's still to be confirmed by the Namibian government, because local newspapers
are pointing to the fact that he has escaped to Namibia. Yes, presently he has escaped to Namibia, according to indigenous papers and the opposition in Zimbabwe, that he has fled the country to Namibia. Here you can now see that it is clearly an attempt to carefully shift him, since he has been with him for long, and they cannot shift him brutally. They have to take measures that he will be safe, but I want to assure you it's over for him.
And we can see Cameroonians are not indifferent as to what is happening in Zimbabwe. Many other African countries too are reacting. We can see their reactions on social media and other social media platforms. Is the situation in Zimbabwe speaking to Cameroonians and the situation in Cameroon now, the political atmosphere in Cameroon?
Well, you know, the situation in Zimbabwe is the first signal to long-due political regimes. It's a situation where somebody has been in power since April 1980 and has refused to quit power. Who came up as somebody, a redeemer, who came to redeem the majority indigenous Zimbabweans from minority British rule. And then he metamorphosed to something unbearable by his own people, he was trying to dictate. It's a situation that is prevailing in Cameroon right now, because the regime, it will get to a certain level where those who have been clamoring to maintain the regime will get, in fact, they will get exasperated, they will get annoyed, they will get no longer unbearable, and you will see that the whole country, not even one soul, will stand for the regime again. And that is going to come someday. It is natural.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gindo Gibe, for joining us tonight on Talking Point. We hope to have you some other time again.
Yeah, it was my pleasure.
Thank you. Yeah. Always to our televiewers, it was equally a pleasure having you with us in this edition of the Primetime Newscast on Equinox Television. Wishing you a blessed day in the company of our programs. Until we meet again, goodbye.